Welcome to Disrupting Japan, straight talk from Japan's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for joining me. You know, I spend a lot of time talking with startup founders in Japan. I also spend a fair amount of time talking with policymakers and academics, and even executives of large companies who want to support startups in Japan. Two of the most common concerns I hear revolve around the lack of qualified developers in Japan and how the Japanese education system doesn't really prepare students for a world that demands that they innovate. Well, today, we'll be tackling both of these issues head-on. In a few minutes, I'd like you to meet Masa Kato, the CEO of Progate. Progate is an online platform that is teaching young people to code. And yeah, there are a lot of startups doing that. But these guys are onto something. As Masa will explain, he actually started Progate when he was majoring in computer science at the University of Tokyo. And he didn't start Progate as a side project. He started it because even though he was majoring in computer science, he wasn't learning how to program in his computer science classes. Now, all of this will make much more sense when Masa explains it to you. But this foundation might be why Progate has seen so much success so quickly. Progate is now being used in high schools and elementary schools all over Japan, and they've expanded into overseas markets as well. But things didn't work out exactly as they planned, and they had to change their business model to survive. But you know, Masa tells that story much better than I can. So let's get right to the interview. So I'm sitting here with Masa Kato, who wants to teach the world to code.
Yep.
So thanks for sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me.
Masa, you are the founder, CEO of Progate.
Yep.
I explained it a bit in the introduction, but why don't you tell us a bit about what Progate is?
So basically, we're a company that teaches programming, and we teach it online. The content we teach is mainly web-related, so it's about teaching people how to make websites, make web services.
So HTML, CSS, this kind of...
JavaScript, and Ruby on Rails, and all that. Yeah. And we started this company 5 years ago.
Okay. So is Progate, is it an app? Is it video?
Oh, so we do have an app as well, but we started off as a web service. And instead of using videos, we use slides to teach the students. And we also have an online coding environment, so the users can actually test out their knowledge on the browser without any pre-setup.
And is it just sort of like basic courses, or is it basic to advanced?
So it's basic to intermediate, I'd say. So we teach the fundamentals of these programming languages and eventually lead them on to programming frameworks. And then, we lead them to develop their own services.
So is the primary interface the app, or is it the browser?
The browser.
Yeah?
Yeah,
I can understand that. I mean, trying to code on a smartphone would be kind of challenging.
That's true. But we do have a special keyboard to make that easy.
Yeah? Do people do that? I mean,
yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I can't imagine that. Maybe it's a generational thing, but for me, even like laptop screens seem kind of small. I can't imagine doing it on a smartphone.
We do provide Progate to high school students and junior high school students, and they actually find it easier to learn on the mobile app.
Really?
Yeah, because some of them don't even know how to type emails to register on Progate, because they're so used to, flicking on their smartphones. They can't type. Even if they can, they struggle with, finding where how with Japanese and English, they have to convert.
Right.
Yeah, so they accidentally type in Japanese and they're like, it's not working.
Oh, okay. So in that case, like having a really controlled environment, even with a tiny screen is... all right, that makes sense.
And even for adults, because a lot of Japanese people travel on trains and stuff, they can use that time to review the content they learned on the web version and try it on the app version.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So the last time I checked, you had something like 600,000 users now, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about your customers. Who are they? You mentioned like some are high school students. Is it mostly younger programmers, older? Who are they?
Okay, so our main target is people in their 20s, I'd say, 20s to 30s. So people who already have a job not in IT and who want to, look for other jobs in IT or something IT related. But recently, over the past 2 years or so, many teenagers are starting to learn on our platform as well. So that's starting to change a little bit.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's really people who are looking to move into IT jobs. They're not like hobbyists.
Both actually, like university students, especially in Japan. It's becoming a trend to learn programming, just as a skill. Not to get jobs, but people are starting to think that it's really important to be like programming literate.
I think that makes a lot of sense, really. I mean, programming today is like, I don't know, knowing how to use email, or it opens so many doors in business. And
Exactly, yeah. So technology is like all around you, and it's becoming very important. And especially since programming will be a compulsory thing to learn in high schools and junior high schools and even primary schools in Japan in 2 years.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So the Ministry of Education has said all students are learning programming.
Yes, that will be included in the actual curriculum. Even parents are starting to get more interested in learning to code.
What language are they going to be teaching in schools?
So I guess JavaScript.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, but Python is starting to get more attention, and yeah.
That's really encouraging. Well, actually, you mentioned university students, and you started Progate back when you were studying at Tokyo University, right?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So was it a hobby project that just got out of hand, or did you start it knowing you wanted to make a company out of this?
So I guess it was a little bit of both. When I first started learning programming, it was at uni, in my third year of uni. So that's when people start to choose their majors in Tokyo University. So I chose computer science, and that's my first experience with programming. And I wanted to learn how to make web services and iPhone apps, because like 5 years ago, everyone started getting iPhones, and I thought it was really cool. I thought programming was really cool, so I wanted to learn that, and I majored in computer science with high hopes. But what I actually learned there was not quite what I expected. It was more academic.
Yeah, let's dig into this, because this is something I've thought has been a little odd about computer science in Japan. Yeah. So, what were they teaching you?
So they were teaching me like the history of programming, like how it was first made, and
like the Babbage engine and things like this.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to learn it now. Now that I'm an actual programmer, I'd like to know deeper into it. But back then, I wanted to know more like practical stuff. But all the professors there didn't really teach me that. And that's understandable, because they aren't really doing the latest web stuff.
I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever met a computer science professor in Japan who has ever had to deliver a project to a customer.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I didn't know that before, but after majoring in computer science, it just didn't feel right,
Yeah. So was that a common feeling among your classmates, that you just wanted to build something?
Not really.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah, they were pretty satisfied with it.
Really?
Yeah. So usually, students in computer science, they get a master's degree after that and try to get into a big company in Japan. Like, I could have taken that option as well, but since I was very passionate about creating my own services, I had to find other friends who felt the same way as me. Right. And I was lucky enough to find them. So, and they are the founders of Progate. Yeah.
And so when you and the team first made Progate at university, your first users, I assume, were fellow classmates and people at the university.
Yeah. So it actually didn't start off quite well, since I was a beginner and all my friends were beginners as well, we were struggling. And so we had a programming community kind of thing, but it didn't really work out because there wasn't anyone who could teach us programming.
Yeah, to teach each other.
Yeah, and that didn't quite work because we were just a bunch of beginners who didn't know anything. So we were just always stressed, because we weren't getting anywhere. But after a while, me and my co-founder, we were lucky enough to find this person who works for an IT company in Japan, and he showed us all the things that we had to learn, like all the milestones that we had to accomplish. After that, me and my co-founder, we stay at a share house for a month, and we just code and code and code. And yeah, with the help of that person, we were able to release a web service. And yeah, that experience was like really big for me, had a really huge impact. Before that, I'd thought that the only option that I had was to get into a big company in Japan, like all the other people. Mm-hmm. But after learning to code, I felt that I had other options because I was not just making money, but adding value to the world. And that felt really good.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is one of the things that I love dearly about programming in general, and I miss it because nobody lets me program anymore, with good reason. But it is this wonderful combination of artistic expression and building something that is truly useful that I don't think there's anything quite like it.
I agree.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So once this was up and running, were other university students interested? Were other university students like registering and say, yes, we want to learn programming this way?
Yes. Once my co-founder and I got the hang of programming, the programming community was up and running again because we could teach them now. So for a while we were teaching them in person, but we were teaching so many people that it just got out of hand, So that's when we came up with the idea of Progate, a platform that's online and anyone could use it, and our target users were our friends. We wanted to teach our classmates, we wanted to teach community members, and yeah, we wanted to help people who were struggling to learn to code, just like we were struggling a couple of months ago.
So was it effective? Did it help the other students learn to code and get better?
It did, yeah, it was, yeah. So
I mean, getting back to kind of how Japan approaches education in general, but CS education in particular, was there any interest from the university saying, wait, this is a better way to teach students? Was
actually the University of Tokyo, they have this program called Entrepreneur Dojo, which is for people who are interested in building their own startups and stuff. And they actually offered us to teach programming for them. So I think universities definitely have some interest in teaching them to learn practical coding, but not many yet.
And what about the CS department in particular?
I guess not so much. We haven't had much attention from the CS department.
So I mean, it sounds like that if things are going to change, it's going to change from outside of the mainstream. If it's from high school or independent studies.
I think the problem with all these educational institutions in Japan is that, as you said, a lot of the teachers have no experience in any practical programming. So the lack of teachers is a big issue.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think it's great that Japan is going to start teaching programming in elementary school and junior high school and high school. But in the back of my mind, I have this fear that like, okay, in the 70s, Japan said, okay, everyone needs to learn English.
Exactly, yeah.
And so English is taught from elementary school in Japan.
Yeah.
Everyone studies English. But almost no one can really speak English.
True. That's true, yeah.
I worry that this programming education might suffer the same fate.
Yes, I tell people the exact same thing.
Yeah?
So actually, over 100 high schools and junior high schools in Japan are starting to use Progate as a part of their curriculum because it's an online service and anyone can use it, even the teachers. So what they do is they get the students to learn on Progate and the teachers only have to support them.
Okay, so that bypasses the problem of the teachers not knowing how to code.
Yeah.
So, fantastic.
Yeah.
So there's hope.
I guess so, yeah. So I had the same fear that, I think programming can be a really fun thing to do if you learn it the right way, but if they don't, it can be something really boring like learning English for students in Japan.
Well, let's take a look at Progate's business model.
Okay.
So, is it a freemium model?
Yes.
Is it so
Yes.
is it subscription or per course?
Subscription, yes. We have, I think, like 15 programming languages, and the first course or the first few courses of each programming language is provided for free. But if the students want to learn more, they have to pay a monthly fee of 980 yen, so that's about $10.
Using a subscription model, how do you manage customer retention and churn? I mean, because what stops people from like just taking one course and then leaving?
With Progate, it's not just about learning programming languages. All the courses are like connected into a single path. Just completing one course of HTML doesn't change much, but completing a path will give you an overall picture of what it's like to...
Oh, I see. So if someone's goal is to be a web designer, you start out with the HTML course and then maybe CSS, then HTML2, JavaScript. I see.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the average lifetime of a user is like 6 to 7 months at Progate. So, yeah, I think that's how long it takes for a user to actually complete a path, like a course on Progate.
Okay, and how many courses are in a path?
So we have different paths. Like we have like full stack web development path, which consists of like 20 to 30, 40 lessons. We have a simple PHP path, which is like 10 lessons. And yeah, students can choose according to their needs.
So online courseware is a really, really active market, and there's a lot of startups active here.
Yep.
So what do you think is the biggest difference between Progate and companies like Coursera or Udemy or...
Okay, so the services you mentioned are all video-based. So students watch a video and then build their own local environment and learn, right? I think there's a problem with that. So I used to learn on services like that. The thing is, when you're a beginner, it's hard to even just configure your own environment to start programming. So you try to install Ruby, you try to install JavaScript and like compile everything and stuff. And some people give up programming before even they write a single line of code. And we thought that it was a problem. So with Progate, you can just jump onto the website and log in and then start coding immediately. So you can do the fun part of programming to begin with. And then once they get the hang of it and they want to learn more and they want to try it on their local environment, I think it's a lot easier for them because they know what they're trying to do.
That makes sense. A much lower kind of barrier to entry to programming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are all of the courses created in-house?
Yes. So we did consider asking other people to make content, but with programming, everything is just so connected together that we thought it was better for us to, find the best path for the...
All right, that way you can kind of control the journey.
Yeah. Especially if you're a beginner, like everything has to be right. People, especially in Japan, have this image that programming is something that's really difficult and something that's not for them. But we want to change that mindset,
Yeah.
So we want to remove as many obstacles as we can. And we thought that doing it in-house would make that easier.
That makes sense. All right, let's talk about your plans for global domination.
Okay, yep.
So last year you opened offices in India and the US, right?
Yes.
So have you noticed any differences in behavior among the Japanese students and, say, the Indian or American students?
Yeah, so there are a few differences. Like users in India, they tend to be more interested in getting jobs as an engineer, whereas in Japan, it's more about getting a new skill. It doesn't have to relate directly to a job.
So in India, they're looking more for certifications?
Yes.
I see.
Yes, exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
So with the English version of Progate, we do provide certificates for completing a course or a path. So that's one thing we did. And Also, another big difference with the Indian market is that students start to learn programming at a really young age compared to Japan. In Japan, so I started learning to code when I was like 20 years old, but in India, primary school students, they learn the basics of HTML when they're like 12 or 10 or something. Yeah, so we felt that our main target was a younger age in India. So right now, we are trying to introduce Progate to more schools, high schools, junior high schools, and university students as well, but freshmen mostly.
So it's just a more B2B model?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're targeting younger users, have you had to change the courses? Have you had to change the interface much?
Not really. I think the really good thing about programming is that it's universal language. I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, or what race you are, what social status you are. As long as you can code, it's the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, that kind of cute character sensibility in Japan translates really well to, like, younger students abroad.
True. Yes, that's true. Yeah. So a lot of students in India, they love Japanese anime, and they love our characters as well.
It sounds like you're taking some of the learnings from the Indian market and bringing them to Japan, because you were mentioning that you're doing business with about 100 schools in Japan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But actually, that came first. Initially, we weren't planning to do any business with these schools, but as I mentioned before, these teachers are struggling with methods to teach their students. This one teacher from Shimane, he contacted us through the platform, and he asked us if he could use the platform to teach his students. And since that was very successful, we thought, why not provide Progate to other schools as well? Since then, we added this academic plan on Progate where teachers can choose 2 programming languages on Progate, and they can use the 2 languages for free. And the reason that we're making it free at the moment is because we want to make sure that these students who are starting to learn programming have the best experience.
Mm-hmm. So is that a strategy you're thinking of going forward? Because sort of the B2B marketing and the product and features you need for a B2B sale are really different from a B2C, where the user is the one buying it for himself.
That's true. But as long as all the lessons are the same, I don't think we have to make too many changes. So we do have a dashboard where teachers can manage the students' progress, but that's pretty much all that we had to change. So
the 100 schools that are using Progate, is it mostly teachers independently saying, this is great, I want to use it for my students?
Yes.
Or was it so it wasn't the school itself saying we're standardizing on Progate?
No, it's mainly the teachers. Yeah, so they do have a teachers community, like a computer science teachers community. And yeah, we've been going to those events and...
All right, step by step, one by one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, Masa, before we wrap up, I want to ask you what I call my magic wand question.
Okay.
And that is, if I gave you a magic wand and I said that you could change one thing about Japan, anything at all, the education system, the way people think about risk, the legal system, anything at all, to make things better for startups and innovation in Japan, what would you change?
So I think I'd try to make everyone in Japan become more fluent in English.
Why is that?
Because I think Japanese startups and Japanese engineers are very talented. They come up with really good products, and they're very passionate. But I think it's always this language obstacle that's stopping them from challenging, overseas. And if that were to change, I think more startups, not just more startups, but I guess the world could benefit more from the products that we make.
So in terms of English, is it a input problem or is it an output problem? Is it that the engineers can't read and understand all of the latest technology, or that they can't clearly express what they've created and explain the value they're creating?
I guess it's a bit of both. So since a lot of us can't get the latest information that's provided in English, that's definitely stopping us from learning quicker. And in terms of output, since we can't speak English, I don't know how to put this, but I guess people are afraid to, express themselves and their product overseas because they don't want to lose face, kind of.
I agree with you. There's so much interesting technology and interesting products being made in Japan, and that Japanese companies are pretty bad at telling the world about what they're doing. And I think you're right. A lot of it is English skill, but I think there's this other cultural component to it.
That's true.
That like American startup founders and Japanese startup founders are almost the extreme opposites in the world on this, where in America, everyone sort of expects that you will make like these crazy claims and be talking about 10 years in the future as if you're launching it tomorrow. And in Japan, everyone's very careful about not wanting to seem like they're bragging very much.
I guess that's true. Yeah, that's true in a way. Yeah. But I think that's also starting to change. Yeah, so I think 5 years ago or 10 years ago, there weren't as many ambitious startup people building their own services. But lately, during the past 5 years, a lot of younger people in Japan are starting to build their own companies and build their own products. And many of them are very passionate and they're innovative. They're more confident and even arrogant sometimes. And yeah, I guess it's not the stereotypical shy Japanese businessman kind of thing. I think it's starting to change.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I think there definitely has been a big change in the last 10 years among Japanese university students.
Yeah.
And there's a huge number now who not only want to start their own company, but are doing it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm not sure if it's changed or not are Japanese parents.
No.
They're still against the...
Yeah, so even at Progate, many of our members had to, have many talks with their parents because they weren't very understanding of what we were doing. Especially, and that's understandable because getting into a good university in Japan is a really important thing. And, after sending their kids off to the University of Tokyo, they definitely want them to graduate and, get a good job.
They're expecting them to go into government or Mitsubishi or...
Exactly. Yeah, that's still a struggle, I guess. But so back when I was a student, which is like 5-6 years ago, none of my classmates were interested in doing a startup. But lately, even students at the University of Tokyo I think the reason is because there's been some successful young entrepreneurs in Japan as well. And many students do internships at those companies and they have a role model.
Yeah, I think role model, that is really key. I think so. I think, actually, two things struck me about what you were talking about. One is in America, it is simply unimaginable that you would have a computer science department where most students have no interest in starting a company. It just doesn't happen. But second, the emergence of role models, I think, has been so important.
Yes, definitely.
And I think, for example, like 10 years ago, when students would look at someone like Mikitani-san or Son-san, like the gap is just too big.
Yeah. They couldn't really relate, right? Yeah. And that's also another reason why we're trying to provide Progate overseas, because there hasn't been really good role models where a Japanese entrepreneur went overseas and came up with a global service. And we really want to be the first example of that, so that the students who are learning now can see us as role models and be more ambitious. Yeah.
So you see a really big difference just in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, I certainly hope that continues.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's going to.
I hope so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Masa, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was very fun.
And we're back. It really is amazing how much and how quickly things have changed in startups and innovation in Japan. When Masa was at Todai only 4 or 5 years ago, almost none of his classmates even considered starting a company. But today, Todai has one of the largest, best-funded innovation programs in Japan, and it's spinning out a steady stream of startups. But back to Progate. The biggest challenge facing Progate is the same challenge that almost all edtech startups face: finding a sustainable and profitable business model. Now, I've given this problem a lot of thought, and I've talked with a lot of really smart edtech founders who've given it a lot more thought than I have. And I think the core problem is that the real product of the education system all over the developed world is not education. In general, people are not paying for an education. They're paying for certification. When a student attends Yale or Todai, or when they take an Oracle or Microsoft training course, they certainly do receive an education. But that's not where the real value is. The value is in the certification, Yale or Oracle's stamp of approval. If a startup is able to teach students everything they could learn at Stanford, but at half the price and in half the time, that's great, but they still would not be competing with Stanford. Even though they provide the same education, it's the certification that has the economic value. So where does this leave innovative companies like Progate, companies who are genuinely committed to helping people learn, who are genuinely committed to providing education rather than certification? Well, as long as the demand for programmers, even self-taught and uncertified programmers, as long as the demand for programmers remains high, Progate will be fine. And I think that demand will remain high for the foreseeable future. But the broader question is an important one. In a society and an economy that is changing faster and faster, that is demanding that we be able to learn new skills fast and learn them continuously throughout our careers, we need to find a way to shift the business model away from certification. We need to find a way to change the education system to actually make it about getting an education. If you want to talk more about coding and learning programming, Masa and I would love to hear from you. So come by disruptingjapan.com/show139 and talk to us. And also be sure to check us out on LinkedIn or Facebook. But even better, if you like the show, tell people about it. It's Tell a Friend Tuesday, or Welcome a Friend Wednesday, or something appropriate for whatever day you happen to be listening to this podcast on. In today's world of social media, an honest recommendation means so much. But most of all, thanks for listening. And thank you for letting people interested in Japanese startups and innovation know about the show. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for listening to Disrupting Japan.